Hi, I'm David from EV World News. We talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I'm here in studio today with my co-host engineer, Mike Herzog. How's it going, Mike?
Doing great, David. Staying
All right.
dry after the 8 inches of rain we got over the past few days.
Yeah, it's interesting that's happening because we've already had three different hailstorms and we're only in May. And
Mhm.
that's really bizarre, but whatever it is, it is hard to keep the grass mowed. Shoot, I'm having to mow the grass about every 6 days right now just to keep up because it's raining so much.
Yeah.
Let's see. So here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about why Republicans won't buy EVs. We're going to talk about Toyota's new Class 8, which is a full-size semi-truck that's 100% electric for the US market, which Toyota hasn't been talking about. Is there really structural overcapacity of EVs and solar that the world cannot absorb? I got a story about the city of Arvin, California, on an innovative solar energy installation. I've got something about GM debuting some new plug-in hybrid models, and something about how plug-in electric vehicles in the USA consume more electricity than the whole of Uganda.
Very specific.
Very, very specific, very specific. So, anyways, we'll go ahead and get right into it. So, our first topic today, we're going to cover about why Republicans won't buy EVs, which I think is kind of horse crap because I don't agree with this in the slightest. And there's even
I
people
don't
out
either.
there
Yeah.
that run, Republicans for Green Energy. That's not the name of the organization, but this is from the Anchorage Daily News. And up until 2019, EVs were not politically polarizing, but something about Biden's campaign all of a sudden made them, it made it be Democrats versus Republicans. And this just seems silly because for those of us who know enough about electric vehicles, we realize that whether you're all about saving the planet or whatever else, none of it really matters. EVs are just better
Mhm.
and they're going to take over. We're not, people aren't going to die in battery fires. They're not, all this other stuff.
It is,
Those
and
things just really don't
I
happen.
see headlines like this, and it's disappointing because it just perpetuates that. Well, this is a red versus blue thing. This is a Democrat Republican thing, and it really isn't. I think you and I are good examples of that. I think you lean a certain direction, I lean a certain direction, but on this topic, we can come together in the middle and say, this just makes sense when you talk about
Right.
it from a factual standpoint and how it works and how all these things come together. It just makes sense. But it gets these labels and gets put into this space like everything else today in this political arena, and it's tough. It's tough to get beyond that and just look at the facts.
And I've mentioned this before on here that in Republican states, if that state is getting green energy jobs, the governor is very pro EV and green energy. And you've got a lot of states like Georgia, North and South Carolina that are really getting the brunt of the benefits from
Mhm.
the Inflation Reduction Act, which we've talked about before. It's so
What a great
poorly named. It's the complete opposite, but that it's been good for for U.S. jobs.
Mhm.
And I see a lot of criticism of Biden for, he just what is it? He's enacting Trump's platform. And it's really interesting to see because Trump has been talking about how he's going to heavily tariff Chinese imports and all this. And so Biden preempts it by going out and doing that, which I thought was a very interesting move. I think it, on the EV World website, we have all kinds of articles going back and forth on that topic. And
Mhm.
I think we have an obligation to protect US industry from what some of what China's doing, but we're going to get into one of our articles today is covering how Europe is trying to defend itself against the Chinese
Because
because
they're too late. Um, it's going to be tough. That I think that cat's out of the bag. I found it interesting being on this platform and just over the course of the past year or so, I've been doing it. Just the steady rise about Chinese EVs and how they're
right,
penetrating and how these new models are coming out. And kind of being the precursor to this big announcement on tariffs over the past week from the Biden administration on what that looks like. And I can tell you, we've been talking about it for a year. That this is
Right.
coming, and you're seeing the impacts in Europe, and finally it's made it that far where it's in the national landscape. We're even on the EV World website right now, how China rose to lead the world in EV cars and solar panels. I think the solar panel discussion's been there for a while, but the EVs is just starting to reach that kind of that public consciousness space of, wait a minute, like those are high quality vehicles, and they're putting them out there, and it's at this price point. Why are we staying competitive? What can we do to make ourselves more competitive in that space and moving forward?
Well, one of the complaints is, their cars are just cheaply made or whatever, and it's like, well, that's not really true. There
Not
are
what people are
some,
saying.
there
So,
are some, but
yeah.
not BYD, not
Nope.
some, not Neo. There's, some of these companies are traded on the New York Stock Exchange. They're not putting out cheap
Mhm.
crap, but it's just not sold in the United States. They're aiming to unseat the Japanese automakers. They're not looking at the American automakers.
Mhm.
They're not even looking at the U.S. auto market. Although the U.S. auto market, I think, is the second biggest auto market. I mean, China's the biggest by
China's
far.
definitely the biggest. Yeah.
Yeah, and the EU is big. The EU is probably bigger than the United States, but the EU is a lot of countries, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different. But the United States is like 20 to 25% of all world car sales. So obviously it's a very important market, but the Chinese
Mhm.
are able to skip it. But where it's hurting is that Ford, GM, and Stellantis aren't able to export to those countries so much anymore. Their sales are plummeting in China. And one of the arguments is the United States, the EVs that we're selling in China, because we do
Mhm.
make EVs in China, particularly GM. The
GM, yeah.
Buick line, Buick alone has 4 different EVs that we're selling in China, but now they look outdated. The current 2024 Chinese models are so much more impressive technology wise
Oh,
inside the cars than the American cars. And
wow.
so, yeah, it really, there was a recent car show in China, and all of the reviews came back, said the American brands just are not impressive at all compared to all the Chinese brands. And
Mhm.
so that's a tough thing to deal with. So that hurts everything. But um, we're always hearing about how EV sales are slowing, even though their annual sales have quadrupled since 2019.
Yeah.
Grocery stores and restaurants are installing charging stations across the country. EVs have moved beyond niche status and are being produced by Ford, GM, Hyundai, and many others. It's one thing too. Everybody talks about how the EVs are just sitting on the lots and all that.
Mhm.
They're usually talking about Ford, okay, or something like Ford or Stellantis. I don't know about Stellantis EVs, but Hyundai and Kia are killing it.
Yeah.
They're
Oh, they're
not doing
great.
as well
I
as
keep
Tesla.
seeing more and more of them around here. They just keep popping up, and they're doing well, and they're a nice looking vehicle.
I've started seeing that Nissan Ariya around
Oh, really?
Omaha. Yeah, I've seen a few of them where I've seen it. Well, the first thing you notice is it's a Nissan EV or a Nissan SUV, and
Mhm.
you'll notice the front has no grill. It has
That's
the
always
flat
kind of one
grill.
of the telltales.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to tell a car
I
is
always
an
look for the
EV.
exhaust and, yeah, the grill, and you can
The
kinda
Mini EV is a little harder to tell because it only has half a solid grill, and
mhm.
then it has a little bit open, more like the traditional gas
Yeah.
powered cars. And so it's a little harder to tell with the Minis.
Mhm.
Okay, but you do see a few of those around Omaha as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I've started to see more and more F-150 Lightnings. I've seen Hummers. I've seen Cybertrucks now. So, they're out there. They're
It's
out there.
coming up, and just in casual conversation with people, oh, looking at a new vehicle, like, well, I'm looking into what an EV, and what I hear a lot of is the plug-in hybrid option, where it's like, I
Mhm.
kind of like that, where for my day to day it works, but then I still have gas for a long trip, and it's anecdotal, right? But it's people are talking about it, people are asking questions, and we're a conservative state, and where we're
Right.
at, and seeing some of these spaces, and people are asking questions. People just want to know, like, well, how does this work? What would this look like? Are you building charging infrastructure? How do I do this in my house? All of these things you want to see from it. Hopefully it's starting to get over that hump of, not being embarrassed because it's a blue product, to go out and ask questions about it and learn more about it.
Now, you do know that hybrid is 120 times more likely to catch on fire than an EV, right? So, but it's only twice as likely as a gas car.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. How many gas cars have you had catch fire in your life?
How many have I ever seen?
No,
Maybe
I
one.
said, how many have you had?
I know, exactly. In my life, in all the millions of vehicles I've seen in my life and all the
Have you
miles.
ever known anybody that had a gas car catch on fire?
Yeah,
Have you ever known anybody that had an EV catch on fire?
mm-mm.
It is kind of funny. I mean, I see gas cars on fire from time to time.
Yeah.
Maybe one a year or something like that. And I'm just sitting there thinking, it's like, okay, EVs are 60 times less likely. So at some point in the next 60 years, I should see one EV fire.
See one.
Yeah, I should see one, but will I? Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but anyways, so this is where this article about Republicans saying that 46% of respondents favored a gas car compared to 90%, only 19% want a fully electric car. The rest of the people, I guess, like buses and bicycles. But here is a chart, though, showing the differences between all adults that currently own, seriously considered buying, might consider buying, would not buy an EV. Now we're talking about a full electric vehicle, not a hybrid, not a plug-in hybrid.
Yep.
And Democrats, 27% said they would never buy an EV. So you've got a certain amount of Democrats who have no interest in buying an EV.
It's still new and scary and different, and we're learning.
Yeah, but 69% of Republicans say what? Now what's interesting is it shows that 6% of Republicans claim they already own an EV. Almost everybody I know that owns an EV, if I know their political status, they're Republican.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, with the exception of Bill. Okay. So I'm just telling you, I don't know very many liberals that drive a EV. They're almost all, and they all tend to be in either medical or tech.
Yeah.
It's very highly concentrated in those fields, but I see, independent 6%, Democrat 9%, all U.S. adults 7%, and I find it's not that big of a trend, but there are 48% of people said they would not buy an EV. Period. That's a lot of percentage of the whole.
That's big
population.
and just that hard line in there. Like I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah. So, and those numbers have gotten worse. So it was different 2-3 years ago before it became, so politicized.
Yeah.
But now that as it's become politicized, these numbers have definitely gotten worse. That while the percentage owning has gone up, the percentage of people said they would not buy keeps increasing as well. And people are entitled to their opinions, but we see that in the next, we look at the wave of, compared to how it was 2 years ago, where in 2 years the prices are going to be on a lot of vehicles we haven't seen yet, like the VF3, the EX30, the Hyundai Kona is taking a price drop into the 20,000s. There's a couple of others, the Tesla Model 2 coming out hopefully next year. They're planning on having the first quarter of next year. So we're looking at a wave of cheaper cars, and that's going to change things. When it starts being, even without the tax credit, cheaper to buy an EV than it is a gas car, I think you're just going to see much more
it is
adoption.
It's market function, and you and I have talked about this a lot before. Like, let the markets function. Don't let them land where they're going to land, and go from that point in there. And I think we're going to see this come through naturally, because no matter how you feel about the environmental green, one way or another, we all answer to the other green, and that's dollars. And when this starts to make sense from a financial standpoint, it's going to figure itself out and move that way, and it's going to move the needle. hopefully discussions like this and podcasts and opportunities like this give people that from both sides of the aisle, whoever you might be, the opportunity to learn and
No,
see articles, see information, try to get unbiased viewpoints from folks like this is just what it is. This is what's happening. This is what's on the market. These are how they perform. This is how the grid is preparing for it. So hopefully it can enter into that conversation and give people some of that neutral perspective on this is just what's happening out there.
yeah, and it's interesting too, because so many people just think about it as a push for, different things, whether it is only a push for saving the planet, or if it's only a push for allowing the government to control us by having EVs, that somehow they're going to control us through our cars, which I can see some of that, but there's not any compelling evidence that they couldn't do that with a gas car too.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm just, that one really kind of escapes me. It's like, well, what are they going to do with the electric cars they can't do with gas? It's like, well, we'll turn off all the electricity. It's like
the computer chip shortage from a few years ago impacted every vehicle, not just EVs.
Yeah, I mean, if you still have that 1950s, Ford pickup truck that you're keeping around, that they're not going to be able to control that. If we want to go back and be like Cuba and only drive around in 1950s automobiles, that would be one solution, right? I just don't get some of it. Anyways, let's move on. Our next article is about Toyota. Toyota claims they're never going to make an all-electric semi, yet here they've launched a Class 8, it's called a Turn. That could be a trucking industry term. 100% electric truck for the U.S. market. Now, what's interesting is this says FCV on the back for fuel cell vehicle, which sounds like hydrogen, but this is, let's see, Toyota is launching a 100% battery electric pickup truck only to disappoint U.S. car buyers with news that it probably won't be available. Oh, it probably won't be available in the U.S. New Turn Class 8 heavy-duty electric truck with a big move concerned Toyota has been notoriously late to the 100% battery electric party. And now it's a part of their Hino branch, which has been pitching the Class 8 fuel cell trucks for North America. The fuel cell angle is even a bit more interesting because Hino has paired with the Norwegian battery and fuel cell firm Herzog to bring its battery electric truck to life in a deal valued at $2 billion. Well, I guess that would be a reason why. Let's see if we see anything else here. The 23 announcement followed an earlier agreement for Herzog to supply battery packs for several Hino trucks to produce commercially in 24. So it appears everything is going according to schedule. Let's see here. Herzog expects to make 10,000 Class 8 trucks for Hino by 2030. But these, my understanding is Herzog and Hino are subsidiaries of Toyota.
They may be. I don't know. We'll learn more.
I'm not sure about that.
Herzog here in the future. That's a neighbor who works there and manufactures high pressure tanks for gas. So we will see.
Okay, Toyota aims for the Turn to jump ahead of the ever-growing electric truck pack in the U.S. market, and they're not messing around. Herzog announced they expect the new RC8 truck to begin rolling off the floor of its factory in Dallas, Texas, and into the hands of Hino dealers sometime later this year. Herzog is deploying a Hino chassis assembled in the U.S. and an X-axle from the Ohio automotive firm Dana. And for the time being, Panasonic Energy is shipping its battery cells from Japan. This is, some of this seems like confusing journalism. New Turn electric truck and cold weather performance. The Arctic Turn signifies that Herzog is confident about the new truck's cold weather performance. That remains to be seen, but the old line about cold weather cutting the EV battery range is getting older by the minute.
So turns in reference to the bird, and that it's just cold weather ready.
I don't know. That part I haven't quite figured out yet. There's not been any. This is all new information, right?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if maybe they're choosing like a different battery technology, but it doesn't sound like it because I think those sodium-ion batteries are less easy to be subjected to the cold, range loss. But who knows? Battery range and supportive technologies are continuing to improve rapidly. So our guess is that Hino and Hexagon Puros have been paying attention. Turn drivers can expect a range of 200 miles for city duty cycles, referring to how much the vehicle is used. City duty cycles account for 95% of use cases for Class 8 trucks. Okay, so that it still wouldn't cover over the road, but it would just
No.
be for local. And the Tesla trucks, I think, have a 500-mile range on the Tesla semis. Let's see. And somebody was, I quoted something about a lot of the Class 8 vehicles being 3 times the cost. I had somebody correct me. They said that the Tesla is only about $180,000. They're not really available for general use, as opposed to 120,000 if you went out and bought, say, a Peterbilt diesel. So I was under the impression that it was more like $300,000 for the Tesla. So apparently it's much cheaper than I thought. Okay,
That's
so
good.
yeah, so I don't know where Toyota will be coming in here, but this was, yeah, I hadn't actually read this article before I started reviewing it, so I'm not really sure how useful some of that information is. But my next article is there really structural overcapacity of EVs and solar that the world cannot absorb. This is coming from the European Union, where they claim that Chinese EVs are flooding Europe. Now they are selling; they're not just sitting on lots.
Yeah.
So, is flooding a good term? I mean, are they making them too cheap? Is China subsidizing that, to drive that cost down? The thing is, most Germany doesn't, but a lot of the European Union countries, they're not necessarily giving you, they don't do the US thing where you can get like a tax credit. They may simply not charge you sales tax. Now in Europe, they have massive sales taxes. They call it a value added tax.
Yeah.
And on vehicles, it can be anywhere from 50 to 100%.
It's insane. It is. Yeah, it is a big.
I think Denmark, it's 100%. It may be worse than that. If you're Danish, you're free to chime in. And if anybody has any comments, you can always reply on whatever social media you're watching on, and we generally will see it as long as it's not messing up. But generally, we can see it. We may have to reply on by voice. We can't reply on all the platforms, but we can see, and we'll get a message saying, where you were and what it was. But anyways, this was something. So Xi Jinping was in Paris, and there were calls for China to address the structural overcapacity that would lead to the Chinese EVs flooding Europe. And the president of the European Commission said China continues to massively support its manufacturing sector. Is that really a bad thing? I mean, shouldn't they support their manufacturing sector?
No.
And shouldn't all countries support their industries? Combined with the domestic demand, it is not increasing, thus the world cannot absorb China's surplus production. As we have shown, we will defend our car companies, we will defend our economies, and we will not hesitate to do so. Well, that's right. China should be trying to support their manufacturing, and those countries in Europe should be trying to defend their own internal industries.
100%.
That's what good leaders of countries do.
I mean, this is all market function. I mean, they're saying, well, we can't absorb this extra. Like, the market's going to determine what you can absorb. You can apply incentives or costs or whatever you want to call them to prevent that from happening and influence market behavior. But the idea, like, well, the world can't absorb it. Well, the world can't absorb an increase and your industry at the same time. So what are you going to do about it?
Well, you got two conflicting opinions here. One, and same thing we're dealing with in the United States. We want immediate adoption of EVs, but we don't want it if people want to send all Chinese cars to us, okay, that are affordable, okay? And so you have this quandary. It's like, well, we do want everybody to drive EVs. We want them to drive our own EVs. We want them, like in the US, we want them to drive Ford and GM and God forbid Tesla. It's like people always forget that Tesla is the most American-made car, and Ford, GM, and Stellantis aren't even close. But they are the traditional automakers. But if you're in France, you want Renault and Citroën. to be making your EVs. If you're in
Mhm.
Germany, you want BMW and Volkswagen
So yeah,
producing and
100%.
Mercedes producing your EVs, or Opel.
Right,
You know,
all of this makes sense, right? You want your local industry to provide what you need,
yeah. Well, you want them to have jobs,
and
and
build value and build equity in your native soil, not ship that from a different location. So it's
I'm amazed at
yeah.
journalists that don't understand economics. They
Mhm.
understand when you have manufacturing, you have jobs. So let's say as a government, you subsidize that manufacturing. So let's say right now through the Inflation Reduction Act, which once again, it's a shitty name. Okay. But because of it, Hyundai is going to start making 300,000 cars a year in Georgia. It's
Wow.
going to employ tens of thousands of people.
Mhm.
Okay. What are those tens of thousands of people? They're all going to get paid, right? They're all going to pay taxes.
They're
Okay.
all gonna live,
And
work.
and they all live in Georgia, which also has state taxes. So it's going to increase the
Mhm.
state tax base for Georgia. And those people are going to keep voting for the politicians that put that in because they help them be better in life. And that's what, when you're a politician, your job is to improve the lives of the people in your district. Okay. It doesn't matter, if I'm a senator from Nebraska, I have to be concerned about the citizens of Nebraska. I don't need to be concerned about the citizens of California or Georgia or Texas or Florida or where. Oh, I disappeared. I
Last year.
disappeared. I'm
You're back.
back. Yep.
Mhm.
But I only need to be concerned about the citizens of Nebraska. Yes. And the country as a whole, but predominantly what the people who voted me in, what they're
Mhm.
concerned for. So that makes for interesting things. I do find it fascinating, though, that the current administration is taking the ideas that somebody else is campaigning on and going ahead and implementing them because they're all kind of in agreement that that's what needs to be
It,
done.
it, it's come to a head, right? I mean,
Right.
it had to. It had to come to this because even God, at some of these price points for the Chinese manufacturers, even with 100% tariff on them, I mean, if they're allowed to sell in the United States, they're still going to be competitive.
Yeah,
Um,
you bring a $10,000 seagull over here, put a $10,000 tariff on it, it's still only $20,000.
so
The
only
difference is when you
20,000.
go to the US dealer model, then they're going to tack on another $5,000. And then all of a sudden it's $25,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start having,
Yeah.
problems with cars sitting on lots. But there are workarounds to some of these tariff things.
Mm-hmm.
Because I look at the the way that Volvo EX30 is being brought, because it's been made in China by Geely, okay, which owns Volvo,
Mm-hmm.
and they're able to come over here and sell it at a $35,000 price point because Volvo exports from the United States. Volvo manufactures in the U.S. and exports other vehicles that it makes here, and
Gotcha.
because of that, they're able to
So
import.
they opened
And
up that hole in the tariff wall, and now it can flow both ways through it.
way I'm understanding it is they will still pay the tariffs on the ones they bring in, but
Oh,
then it'll be refunded to them.
okay. Okay.
So they'll get a refund. So that makes for a different thing. Now, this article from Clean Technica was about the overstructure. It started bringing up, I'll present this on the screen. It started bringing up the direly low access to electricity situation in a lot of African countries. Now, a lot of your African countries are almost entirely powered by hydroelectric, which,
Mm-hmm.
like 90+%. And some of them have coal, some of them have other, but a lot of countries are yet to bring access to more than 50% of their citizens. It's really hard to fathom. We're a country where we all have, pretty much all have electricity, to think that there's still people out
Wow, and
there in a
even
continent with
the
a
fifty
billion
percent that
people.
do have access, it's intermittent.
Right.
You take advantage of it when it's accessible and available, and because it's not going to be there every day.
Well, even my editor for this channel, he's in India. He
Mhm.
is without power like 2 to 4 hours every day.
Mhm.
So he doesn't have power all the time. Usually the power like turned off at night or something.
Mhm.
And which is
It,
interesting because when there shouldn't be much of a draw anyways, but for some reason
I don't know.
that's I don't know why
I
it's
don't know
that
the grid
way.
dynamics over there.
Right. But anyways, To urgently address the dire situation of lack of electricity, a combination of many small, medium, large, and very large distributed renewable solutions backed by battery storage could play a key role in addressing these long-standing issues. Now, some of this has definitely been done in some African countries. Okay, I know it's been done in Nigeria. I'm looking at a project in two other countries. You know, possibly where we're looking at putting in solar and batteries, and they're looking here, distributed mini grids plus energy as a service battery rentals for productive use of energy could help transform the lives of millions in many rural parts of a lot of countries in the African continent. We all have the tech we need in the world right now. Part of it is too, though, and when we're talking about economics, there still has to be the economics of these people being able to take the power, pay for it, and be able to have it be meaningful in their lives. That it's helping with job
Yeah.
creation, it's helping with other things
You have to build the
they
rest
can
of the
do.
infrastructure around it. You have to
Right.
have something to use it with. So what is this? I guess what's the article going for with this comment that
I
China
haven't
could
quite
be
figured out. I don't know if
focusing
they
on
think that
that?
people. Well, I think they're thinking that China should just do it for free. I don't know. They really haven't
That's
gotten
kind of
into
what
that.
it's pointing to. Like, hey, China, forget about making money. Out of the goodness of your heart, go do this project that none of the rest of us will do.
Yeah, some of it gets a little bit absurd, but let's see. Tanzania reported excess generation capacity, which has resulted in them curtailing generation, but that's because they need battery storage. Well, Tanzania probably is real big on hydroelectric. So I don't know. Some of it's a little disingenuous. I've noticed that if you're part of the WEF, or the World Economic Forum, they really try to convince you not to use any fossil fuels for electricity, or you won't be able to get loans from the World Economic Forum to advance your country. And some of that, I think it's tough to make the poor people of the world, bear the brunt of greening everything. I'm all for green energy and everything, but it's just really tough to say, hey, you can't have this, when they're already,
Yeah.
years behind
When
the
and
Western world.
I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but at a per capita carbon impact statement from those, at a net level or gross level, yeah, you have a lot of people and a small amount, but at a per capita level, developing nations have no carbon contributions
Right.
comparatively to the rest of the world. And it's just, hey, you guys are the problem because you're developing. And if you develop into this wonderful system we have, the planet can't sustain it anymore. If everybody has the same things we have, it doesn't work. So you need to go do something else.
Right. Pretty much just telling them to pound sand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck.
It's a
And
tough
seems like
road
the,
there.
the scope of that article is like, hey, China, just go fix it. Hey, don't enter into our markets with your vehicles. Go fix the developing world's problems.
All right. So for my next topic, I want to talk about General Motors. And General Motors was kind of a leader in the plug-in hybrid space when they introduced the Volt. Really, nobody else had anything that could really compete with it. It was the Prius Prime was basically based on the Volt. It was to make up for it. 37 to 50, depending on which year you got, 37 to 50 mile range on the battery, and then on gas it gets like 40 miles per gallon. And they discontinued it in 2019 because they didn't think it was going anywhere. Well, now if they had them, they'd be selling hundreds of
Oh, they'd be
thousands.
killing it. They'd be killing it.
Yeah, and it just seems like they're just not great at picking what they're going to do. Now, here's a Chevy Blazer EV. This was the one that just got crucified on its first car reviews, because what happened was they delivered cars that had all kinds of problems to people to review them. And like one of the reviews had like 17 things broken on the car. It wasn't that it was dysfunctional as an EV, it was dysfunctional as an automobile,
Just
period.
as a plain old automobile. And
Yeah.
there are basic
Yeah.
things like I expect any car to do this.
Right. And the thing was like really half-assed done, and it never should have went anywhere the way it went. But suddenly all of the auto executives are big on the term plug-in hybrid. Mary Barra said earlier, whoop, I accidentally clicked on something. Mary Barra said earlier this year their company expects to begin offering plug-in hybrid models to cope with disappointing sales of electric cars, because they only offered one electric car, the Chevy Bolt, and they discontinued it. Now they say that the Cadillac Lyriq was slow out of the gate, but it has an unreal demand right now. The Blazer EV and Equinox EV were delayed. The Chevy Silverado EV was years away from production. Buick dealers have never had any EVs to sell in the US, even though they've had 4 to sell in China. And future Cadillac EVs, other than the Lyriq, are still years away from production. So how GM could know there was a slowdown in EV sales is hard to figure, because they've gotten rid of the Bolt. They don't have it. And yeah, so this argument is saying like, hey, if you had a Chevy Malibu that is selling reasonably well and make it a plug-in hybrid using the same platform as the Volt, would have been great. There was even a Cadillac that came out on the Volt chassis. It was a 2-door Cadillac. It was about $75,000. You can pick those up right now for about $15,000 and then get the $4,000 tax credit on them. Wow. And they look nice. I mean, you were talking about $75,000.
I don't know if I'm familiar with that.
It's like ELR or something like that. It's one that I had never heard of until I started doing this show with Bill, and we were looking at, let me see, Cadillac ELR. Let me see if I find one here. Some of these are a little more expensive, but it might not be ELR Cadillac. I'm trying to see what it was. With me a second here. Might not be possible to find one. Oh, I can't even find one for sale right now.
They're all scooped up.
Yeah. I've looked at these here's a 2016 from Carvana. Let me change this, because this one that I found is a little more expensive. It was $25,000. Oh, come on. Allow me to present. But this was $75,000 new. Now, the ones I've been looking at that were around 15 were 2014 models. This is a 16 model. Not an ugly car.
Cadillac put this out in 2016 and 2014.
Yeah.
I had no idea. It is a nice looking car. I mean, let's
see here.
It looks like a Cadillac. I mean,
yeah, heated steering wheel, remote start, Bluetooth, navigation, Bose 10-speaker system. Let's see. Front wheel drive, but it's a plug-in hybrid. 31 city, 33 highway. I think it only has a 37 or 38 mile battery, but still,
it's plenty. That's plenty for the city.
Yeah, let's see what we got here. 360 Tour. I mean, does that look any different than any other nice looking Cadillac?
No, it looks distinctly Cadillac.
I've never seen one of these advertised, anything. But you could pick this up, $25,000. You took the $4,000 rebate on there, you're at $21,000. 40,000 miles on the damn car.
Wow.
Yeah, and if you have solar like me, you got your first 30 miles basically for about not even 1 cent a mile. To drive that. So that's just interesting to see where that's going. My last article for today, this one's kind of, I don't know why they chose Uganda, but and I forgot to put a hashtag for Uganda. But anyway, so the Uganda people won't see this, but plug-in electric vehicles in USA consumed more electricity than the whole of Uganda in 2023. So this is in the passenger segment of cars, consumed 7,596 gigawatts of electricity in 23, 5 times the consumption of 2018. Now, is that a lot of power?
What was that number again?
7,596 gigawatts.
Yeah, I mean, It's a lot of power. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
More than the country of Uganda, apparently.
yeah, yeah. So that they picked all of these countries, and the country in the world that it was most close to
I know. I'm
was
sure that's just
Uganda.
the World Fact Book, and scroll down and like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
this is one.
Um, yeah, Uganda used a total of 6,032 gigawatts, all grid connected generation plants, according to Uganda's Electricity Regulatory Authority. I
Yeah.
just thought, oh, this is just kind of random. Access to electricity is low. Only 45% of the population of 48 million people has access to
Yeah.
electricity. So they could certainly use a lot more. But yeah, so they're saying the total demand should be about 13,000 gigawatts. Yeah, it was just a very random amount. And I get people all the time saying, oh, because there's always those talks about how the grid can't handle if everybody went EV. We talk about this fact that most of the country's population uses electric hot water heaters. And one electric hot water heater replaced with a heat pump hot water heater reduces your energy consumption for the house the same as that EV would charge.
Yeah.
On average in a given year. It would add about
It
10,000
is like
miles.
we're concerned with the instantaneous demand. Like it
Right.
would be the same if the grid couldn't handle it today if everybody's air conditioners ran at the same time. We count on that natural diversity that, hey, yours starts and runs for 20 minutes and mine then will start and run for 20 minutes, and then our other neighbors will start and run for 20 minutes, and they're not actually all running at the same time. Our water and sewer systems are the same way. If everybody ran their sprinklers and flushed their toilets and ran their faucets at the same time, the systems can't handle that demand. We count on natural diversity of, we don't do all those things at the same time. People don't all flush their toilets all at once.
No, I know, I get it. It is weird to see how some of that. I mean, we see all these demands. I mean, obviously, if everybody went to a supercharger at the same time with all the EVs, they were
Yeah.
all running, everybody was charging their car at the same time, we'd have a problem,
Yeah.
right? But
People don't
it
do
just
that.
doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. Oh, my EV fire video is just hilarious because I have people. It's like, well, yeah, but EV fires are worse, and they could explode, and it could burn down, a high-rise building.
Yeah.
It hasn't happened, but it could.
And a tank full of gas couldn't.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we discovered that jet fuel could burn a building, make
Yeah,
it collapse.
I grew up in the 80s, and I have staple of action movies with, person flicking the cigarette and the stream of gasoline that blows up the car.
It blows up, right?
Unless those led me astray somewhere along the lines. Like, apparently gas cars blow up too.
Yeah. Yeah, it is funny to think about how many people. It's like, okay, well, your odds of having that gas fire, you're probably more likely to get hit by a plane that's been hijacked. And a lot more people have died from planes being hijacked and crashed into buildings than they've died from anything related to electric vehicles
randomly exploding. Yeah.
Right. So, well, as I did research on it, an average of 560 people die annually in the United States from car fires.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And there's so many car fires in the United States. Here was something that was interesting. I was doing research. 20% of car fires in the United States are determined to be arson. But somehow in the UK, that percentage is 60% are determined to be arson. So why is it in the UK that their percentage is so much different? Is it just that they're just not sure here in the United States and don't determine it was arson?
I don't know, and maybe this is just my perception, but anytime I see protesting or verging on rioting in European countries, especially France, they burn cars. I mean, all the cars get burned out, and it just doesn't seem like we do that as much here. Like that's their main mode of protest. Let's go light some buses on fire. Let's go light some cars on fire. And
I assure you, they do it here too, but it's during a mostly peaceful protest. That CNN picture of the guy standing in front of the fire saying the mostly peaceful protesters. It's like that didn't age well, did it? Anyways, all right, Mike. Well, I think that's all we've got to cover for today. And folks, we appreciate everybody watching and listening to us rant. And anyways, if you have suggestions, please leave us a comment and let us know what you might like us to talk about. Which actually, Mike, I had a comment. You know what? I want to look up this comment real quick. So give me a second.
On the other part over here.
No, I had somebody comment on one of the videos and they wanted us to talk about something. So give me just a second to find this, because otherwise I will forget. Let's see. Yeah, because they had something. I can't remember exactly what the question was. I had so many comments. Okay, this one's more battery related. Okay. The rules of battery replacement for an engine battery, they're talking about Chevy Bolt, 2017 to 2019. Now, this is kind of interesting. First question. What are the rules and requirements if a buyer purchases a used 2017 to 2019 Bolt that is anywhere from 60 to 120 odometer and wishes to get the free battery replacement with the newer 62 kilowatt, whereas a 65 kilowatt engine batteries are in the 22 models? Man, I've got no idea on how you go about doing that. I would suggest that you would contact a GM dealer.
Yeah,
you
I would contact your local dealer and ask them. And even if they don't have that expertise locally, they'll be able to contact you with somebody nationally.
So there is a company out there called Recurrent. They're nationwide. They have some type of software that they're able to interface with any battery that is out there at a dealership, and they can assess the quality of that battery. So we had the guy from EV Autos on before, and he now has it, and he listed on his site. It shows you the battery report for every battery on his lot. So he basically, I don't know if he had anything that had below a 95% rating. He might have. I guess they were all, might have been as low as 92, anywhere from 92 to 98% rating. When you get down to about 80% rating, you usually replace it. But that rating is also a reflection of how much of the range is left.
Yeah.
So if you had a car with a 300-mile range, it has a 95%, you've lost 15 miles of range. But most of the cars lose 10% sometime in the first 2 years, and then it stays that way for the next 10 years. And pretty much, I know with Tesla, you have a 120,000 mile warranty on the battery. I believe GM is the same way. Rivian has a 175,000 mile warranty on the batteries. And now what we're seeing is like the Tesla Model 3 long ranges from 2020 on, they seem to be lasting for 300,000 miles or more. There's lots of people that have hit 300,000 miles and have not replaced a battery.
Wow.
And they haven't had significant range reduction other than that 10%.
Okay.
So now here's another question here. Well, I'm interested in knowing the answer to this question. I'd be interested in knowing if the answer is going to apply in the year 2025, when the new model year turns over and further depreciation occurs and the used car market gets adjusted in January 25. You know what? I've thought about this some. So if you were going to drive an EV, and I can't swear on the Bolt. I don't know what the battery replacement cost is on a Bolt battery. I only know what they cost on Teslas. I would suggest somebody put away 10 cents per mile for every mile they drove for the year, put it in something like an ETF, like QYLD, that pays a percent monthly dividend. And that way you could sell the QYLD and buy a battery if you needed to. But once you had driven 100,000 miles, you'd have $10,000 in there. And let's say that took 3 years. Within 3 years, and then we're talking like a Tesla Model 3, that battery is probably going to be, right now it's about $12,000 to replace. It's probably going to be about $7,000 to replace in 3 years.
Yeah, by the time you're actually ready to replace it.
So that 10 cents a mile, and if you're normally only driving 10,000 miles a year, you're only talking about putting away $1,000 each year. You'd have a fund essentially set up for that. And when you're getting a minimum of 120,000 mile warranty on pretty much all of these EV batteries.
Mhm.
That gives you, a lot of mileage. So in that 120,000 miles, you would have saved up $12,000 a month.
$1,000, which
Yeah.
should cover the cost of it.
Yeah. So I think that it's an easy way to look at it, but those EV batteries should get you 300,000 miles. Now, at that point, is your car still worth enough that it's worth replacing it? And then what you do take is you take the old battery and you have that installed in your own house
There you
for
go.
energy
Your
storage,
backup. Yep.
and as opposed to buying a Tesla Powerwall.
Mhm.
And you'd have tremendous battery backup. And then when you get solar or some other source
Yeah.
of energy for your house, then you can keep
Which
it
is
and
a
you're not buying it from the
wonderful
grid.
use for these used batteries that no longer have the oomph and the power density versus weight for an
Mhm.
automotive like application. But if it's just going to sit there in your basement, it's what a use for it. That's amazing. It's perfect.
Yeah, and when they're taking these old batteries, and if you get a free battery replacement, they're not just selling it to somebody for storage, they're sending it somewhere to be refurbished. So
Okay.
they're refurbishing batteries. So a lot of times when you get that free battery replacement, you get a
A
refurbished battery.
refurbished model already. Okay.
Yeah. So you're getting one that's previously had some issues and they've replaced a bunch of cells in it
Mhm.
to get it back up to, maximum
Factory
standards.
spec or
Yeah.
tolerance. Yeah.
So anyways, yeah, so those are tough questions about that are very specific to the Chevy
Very
Bolt.
specific. And
And
yeah, reach out. Your dealers will talk to him.
well, the
My
problem is
electric
their dealer
vehicle
probably
is
doesn't know anything.
yeah. They don't have the experts there, but they have national experts. They have a
Right.
division at the national, and they get them on the phone right away, and we're able to answer questions and go through it. So
Yeah, but if you're looking seriously at buying a used one, I would make sure it has that recurrent battery rating. If
rating
they
on
don't
it.
have it, then you contact Recurrent, find out how you get that rating on the battery on the vehicle you're looking at purchasing used.
That's a good tool. That sounds
Yeah.
like a really good tool on there.
Yeah. Anyways, all right. Well, I ran us over a little bit. But anyways, folks, once again, thanks for watching. I wanted to cover that. And we will see you guys next week when we'll have a special guest talking about how to um, remake your gas-powered car into an EV as kind of a DIY project. So that should be kind of interesting. All right. Thanks, folks.